19, I started selling Cutco cutlery. And I had never been in sales before. I was actually a radio DJ at the time, and decided to leave my dream job to pursue this career in sales because higher upside in income. And on day 2 of training, my 3-day training, my mentor, Jesse, he said, sales is a microcosm for life's adversity. He said, but it's amplified, meaning the average person, he said, occasionally faces rejection. You know, maybe every once in a while during a job interview, or, you know, you're going to face it, he said, as a salesperson every day, multiple times a day, on the phone, in person, you know, you're going to get rejected all the time. He said the average person occasionally faces failure, maybe once a year when they fail to reach their goals. He said you're going to fail with your daily goals and then your weekly goals, and then you're going to hit your goal, and then somebody's going to cancel an order. So he said you need a strategy to quickly move through adversity so it doesn't affect you so much and you can keep moving forward, but without suppressing it and pretending it's okay. And just, that's what most of us are trained to do, is like, okay, I don't have time to feel these emotions, so I'm going to suppress them, and then they, you know, cause you turmoil. Or we feel them too much, and then we're like, I'm going to quit this sales job because I can't handle this emotional roller coaster, right? So the 5-minute rule, he said, is the strategy, and it simply states that it's okay to be negative when something goes wrong. It's okay to feel upset, but not for more than 5 minutes, essentially. And the number's arbitrary, but I think it makes sense when you explain it, and it's that he would teach us that when you feel upset over something because a customer rejected you, he said, and you can use this in everyday life, like if you hit traffic and you go, oh, why is this car going so slow? He said you set your timer for 5 minutes, and you give yourself 5 minutes to feel your emotions fully. Bitch, moan, complain, cry, vent, punch a wall, like express your emotions fully. Don't suppress, but express. And he said that allows you to process them. And he said after the 5-minute timer goes off and it starts beeping, he said you say 3 very powerful, life-changing words. Can't change it. It's an acknowledgement. I can't change what happened 5 minutes ago, so right now I have a really simple choice. I can continue to resist reality and wish it didn't happen and be upset about it, which doesn't serve me nor change anything, or I can accept reality exactly as it is. I might not be happy about it, but it's far more powerful, profound, and lasting. I'm at peace with it, right? Happiness is an emotion. You can be happy 1 minute, get some bad news, now you're upset, right? We're jostling between these emotional states versus when you accept reality exactly as it is, without wishing and wanting that something from the past 5 minutes or 5 years ago was different, you're living in a state of peace, right? And looking back now, having read Eckhart Tolle and all this Eastern philosophy, I'm like, oh, he was teaching us some of the deepest spiritual wisdom in a really bite-sized, simple, implementable way. So when I first heard it, I go, well, 5 minutes isn't long enough. I'll still be upset when the timer goes off. And the first few times I was, but after a week of doing this, I remember I set my timer for 5 minutes one day. I was like, I can't believe this woman canceled her order. It was the biggest order I ever had. Oh, I'm so upset. And then what am I going to do? I mean, all I can do is get on the phone tomorrow and make more calls. And I picked up the phone and I had 4 minutes and 32 seconds left. And it was the most enlightening moment of my life. I went, wait, what's the point of resisting my reality and wishing that she didn't just call me and cancel her order for 4.5 more minutes? What a waste of my life. I'm going to say can't change it now, 30 seconds in, and I'm going to be completely at peace. And that philosophy, you know, and at first it's counteractive to how we've lived our lives. It's like, well, no, I get upset and I stay upset. But once you start doing it, it's elevating your consciousness to a level of awareness where you're like, oh, I get to choose how long I continue to wish this thing didn't happen. But when I understand that wishing and wanting and resisting reality is futile, why don't I just accept life as it is and move on? And so for me, I applied that later to car accidents and cancer and bankruptcy and on and on and on, like big events in life, by practicing it in traffic and in the small events.
That's so beautiful, and I love that it starts with the idea, and like you said, 5 minutes is arbitrary. It could be 3 minutes for someone, it could be 10 minutes for someone, and that's perfectly okay, but the idea of putting a constraint of time, to say, all right, you can bitch and moan, but let's just do it in a constraint of time, because constraints, for lack of a better term, increases productivity for anybody that is practicing constraints in anything in life. And or at least that's my experience of working with people or experiencing in my own personal life, is if I put a constraint to something, it actually allows me to find the most effective and potentially most powerful way to get through a thing. whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of a neat trick to kind of go, okay, let's put some constraint on it. Find your own constraint. 5 minutes is a great idea because, like you said, over time you realize that you don't even need 5 minutes, which brings my attention to the practice of practicing. When you practice the practice,
Yep.
what happens is it becomes a part of you, it becomes a habit. And so while it may start at 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever that is for the person, as you practice it, it becomes less and less and less. It's almost like you built a muscle.
Sure.
And so after a certain period of time, you're like, oh, I don't even have to try, and I don't even have to do that much. It's kind of like automatic for me.
Yeah.
And you then, in passing, said you've done this for big events in life. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so a year and a half after I learned the 5-minute rule and I started my Cutco sales career, I was giving a speech at a conference in front of about 40 of my colleagues. And that night, I was driving home from the speech, and around 11:30 at night after we all went out to dinner, and I was driving a new Ford Mustang. I'd bought my first new car 3 weeks prior with my commissions. Like, life was great. I had a girlfriend. I'm living on my own, And that night, the unimaginable happened. A drunk driver got on the freeway going the wrong way, head-on collision. They hit me head-on at 70 miles per hour. My car spun off the drunk driver, airbags exploded, windshield shattered, cars crushed, and I spin off the drunk driver, and the car behind me crashed into my driver's side door at 70 miles per hour. And at 70 miles per hour, I mean, it completely crushed the car. When you look at pictures, it looks like about almost half of a car from the side because it crushed it into my body, and instantaneously I broke 11 bones. My femur, the biggest bone in the human body, broke in half. My pelvis was crushed between the center console, broke in 3 places. I broke my arm in half. I shattered my elbow. I severed the nerve in my forearm, shattered my eye socket, on and on and on. And I began losing a lot of blood, and then that night I was found dead at the scene. When the paramedics and the fire department used the jaws of life to cut me out of the car, it took them an hour to do that, and I had lost so much blood that my heart stopped. And my heart stopped beating for approximately 6 minutes. I was in a coma for 6 days. They revived me on the helicopter ride to the hospital, and came out of the coma to be told that I had permanent brain damage and that I would never walk again. And at 20 years old, at any age, but at 20, I'm like, this is like, it's like it's a nightmare, but it's my real life. Like you're having, it took more than 5 minutes. Let's just say that, right? But I will say that maybe it was 5 days, but it was roughly 5 days that my doctors called my dad in, and they said, we want to give you an update on Hal. Physically, we've installed, I've got metal rods in my leg, my arm, my elbow, plates in my eye. They're like, he's stable, because I had flatlined 2 more times in the coma. So it was like, my parents just wanted me to live. Like, at that point, right, it's like, okay, whatever's going to happen after, like, we just want our son to live. Well, the doctors called him in and said, he's stable, he should be with us for a long time. Great. They said, but we're concerned with his mental and emotional state. We actually believe that Hal is in denial or he's delusional, because he's always smiling and laughing and telling us jokes to make us laugh. And they said, frankly, that's not normal. For a 20-year-old young man that's being told he's never going to walk again, he's got permanent brain damage, he's going to have, horrific scarring all over his body from these, the bones and all of that. And they said, we want you to talk to him and find out how he's really feeling. Like, get to the bottom of your parents, like, if whoever's closer of you, go talk to him. So my dad comes in, expresses the doctor's concern, and they said, Hal, they say it's normal for you to be angry or sad or scared or depressed, but not jovial as you have been. And they think you're not facing your reality. So he said, how are you really feeling, Hal? Like, at night when you have no visitors to talk to, no friends, it's you by yourself thinking of your future and being in a wheelchair the rest of your life, what are you really feeling? And I'm looking at my dad. He's sitting next to me on the hospital bed. I'm in my hospital bed. I've got my arms in a brace. I got metal plate. My eyes bandaged. I mean, I'm like not in good shape, right? It was a couple weeks after the accident, and I really go inside because I'm looking at his face. He's holding back tears, and I go, yeah, he's so concerned, and maybe the doctors are right. And I just do a little reflection for about 30 to 60 seconds, and I look at my dad and I smile. I said, Dad, I thought you knew me better than that. He said, what do you mean? I said, remember I lived my life by the 5-minute rule? And he kind of nodded. And I said, it's been 2 weeks since the car accident. My 5 minutes is up. I said, I can't change that I was in a car accident and that I broke 11 bones. I can't change that I have permanent brain damage. And if the doctors are right and I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, then I won't be able to change that. That'll be my new reality. I said, so I've played out the worst case scenario, which to me is, I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life and I never get to walk again. And I've decided I'll be the happiest, most grateful human being that you've ever seen in a wheelchair. Because I'm in a wheelchair either way, and I can't change it. So I can either be genuinely grateful and happy for every moment that I am alive while I'm in a wheelchair, or I can use that as the excuse why I'm miserable. And I often ask people when I share this, like this particular story, what's your wheelchair, right? Like, what's the experience in your life, past, present, or even that you're afraid of for the future, that you have given control over your internal mental and emotional state? Because we've been conditioned, I think, falsely to believe that we always blame someone or something. Well, of course I'm upset. Look at what I lost. Of course I'm angry. Did you hear what she said to me? Versus, oh, I'm resisting the reality of what she said to me, saying it's not fair, I don't deserve it, you shouldn't have said that. And often we're suffering over things that happened when we were children because we're still resisting that reality, wishing it didn't happen, saying it's not fair, versus going, you know what? I can't change what happened. I can't change this other person. But I can choose to be at peace with my life exactly as it is. And then from that place of peace, you have this neutral emotional state where you go, now what emotion do I want to experience? What state would best serve me? And so, the Cutco training is where I learned the 5-minute rule, but where, and then I practiced, I got reps for the year and a half leading up to the accident, but it was the accident when it was like, okay, does this apply? Is it universal to anything or everything? And there's not a lot that I could imagine that it could have been worse than waking up from a coma being told I'd never walk again. But I was like, this 5-minute rule applies here too.